Joining me at the Sky News Centre is Adam Lockyer, expert in American politics from the US Studies Centre. There is a lot to laugh at, and that is an opportunity for the President to relax a bit and poke a bit of fun at himself and his rivals. But the 100 days, though, has been no laughing matter, because he came in, we heard at the State of the Union, he set the standard very high. This was going to be historic. I'll reach across the aisle, be able to work with you. We'll pass historic laws, gun laws, tackle immigration, issues like that that go to the core of America right now. And it hasn't happened.
It's quite stark, the comparison between his second term, first 100 days, and what he achieved in the first 100 days of his first term, where he was able to push through most of his big reforms through those first 100 days.
It was a critical time that he came in, though, wasn't it? Particularly economically, they needed to push things through.
And he had a friendly Congress as well, so he had Democrats control both levels of House. But historians are already looking back and saying that Obama's first 100 days of his first term were the most productive since FDR. So it was quite an achievement. Whereas compare that to his first 100 days of his second term, where he's really trying to struggle to get anything through.
Now, is it just enough to blame it on the other side of the House here? Is it just enough to say the Republicans won't work with me? Or is it incumbent on the President? We've seen people like Clinton have to deal with potentially hostile houses as well and get the job done. What is lacking in Obama's presidency?
It seems as though he's got a different kettle of fish here with this particular Congress. Already they're looking towards the midterms, and the key leadership is already looking towards the 2016 presidential election. So they're already positioning themselves not to look weak to their conservative base, but also then trying to reach across the floor as well and look as though they're quite moderate for the general election. They're looking way ahead here, and so without good leadership from Congress, it's hard to get things done.
Now, gun laws, of course, is one of the key issues, and one that Obama invested so much emotion in and was rebuffed. Was that a poor reflection on him? Did he fail, or was it a poor reflection on Congress?
I think it was all Congress. So we saw in the State of the Union address there were three things that he really wanted to push forward on. One was environmental reform, which we heard nothing about during the election. We heard it pop up during the State of the Union address, and it's disappeared again. Nothing's been done. The second one was gun reform, and this was something that Obama truly wanted to get done for personal reasons. He really felt the massacre.
He said this was for the victims.
Exactly. They deserved a vote, was what he was saying in the State of the Union address. And so he invested a lot of political capital in this. He gave Joe Biden a blank check. Go to Congress, get this deal done. And they weren't able to do it. And the third one was immigration, which looks a little bit more promising. However, we're still yet to see real meaningful compromise.
And then, of course, to have happened, extraordinary when you look at the events of the first 100 days, but to also have the bombings in Boston. How did Obama emerge from that with his handling of that at the time?
I think that the country was pretty sympathetic towards both Obama and the political leadership in general. Most of they were saying the right things. Particularly Obama was quite moderate when he first came out. He wasn't pointing fingers. He wasn't beating the war drum. He wasn't even going around saying this is an act of international Islamic terrorism. Let's all take a breath.
And do you think the country was relieved by that? They didn't really want to hear, we'll go and track them down, you know, you're with us or against us, the old Bush lines?
Well, I think that this is one of these key moments where he could have gone either way, and he decided to be more moderate, more considered, and the country went with him. Whereas if he had have decided to pipe up, beat his chest, then the country probably would have got fired up behind him on that score. And
on your assessment, was this the right way to handle this issue?
Oh, absolutely, and as we find more and more information about the actual bombers, it was the exact right thing to do.
Now, if you look forward another year from now, we start getting into lame duck territory. People are saying, okay, he's spent 2 years now, basically he's cruising down towards the end of the presidency. People start talking about the next presidential election. What would Obama be looking for to achieve to ensure his legacy?
So he wants to defend his achievements so far. So Obamacare, he'll block that at all costs. You won't see the Republicans be able to wind that back too far over the next Obama term. But what tends to happen historically is after he becomes a lame duck after the midterm elections, he won't be able to push very much through Congress at all.
Foreign policy comes into play.
That's right. The president, the way that the United States government is set up, the president has more of a free hand when it comes to foreign policy than pushing through domestic legislation. So you'll probably see Obama starting to turn his gaze more internationally than domestic in the second half of his second term.
And what are the big hot button issues there? Obviously Syria, something needs to be done. Iran is still on the boil. There's the issue of China. Where do you rank the importance of issues right now?
It really depends, because it will probably be more reactive rather than proactive. And Obama is nothing if not pragmatic. So he'll look into the international scene, see what he can do. So we see that Syria is probably one of the most pressing crises at the moment, but there isn't all that much the United States can do. There's no way he's going to send more American troops into a large Middle Eastern country, where he's spent most of his presidency trying to get US troops out of two large Middle Eastern countries. So that's probably not going to be that's going to be a non-starter. North Korea, we might see more attention there, but we also might see a greater attention given towards the Pacific in general. So the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the new economic partnership, those sort of deals we might see really get momentum.
There was so much talked about the so-called pivot to Asia, and a lot of heat at the time about efforts to try to contain China. It's sort of gone on the back burner a little bit more, but do you think he wants to be able to leave the presidency ultimately with that Chinese relationship on a very firm footing?
I think so. I think that Obama, he has this history with the Pacific. He grew up for a short time in Indonesia. He's from Hawaii. So for a long time he's had more of a Pacific outlook than his predecessors. And so I think that if he's looking for a foreign policy legacy, a lasting legacy, it's going to be that no longer is the Pacific the back door and the Atlantic Ocean the front door. He wants to turn that around, and this century is going to be facing more towards the Pacific.
Now, projecting even further from that, you were talking about the Republicans who were saying, OK, we're looking at the midterms, we're looking at the next presidential election, but at the same time, potentially alienating the sort of people they want to or need to be able to appeal to. Obama joked about appealing to minorities and putting his own hand up. But he has a point. If they don't broaden their appeal, they're not going to be successful, certainly in 2016.
That's right. And so when they've dissected last year's election, one of the big outcomes has been that they need to expand their base in Latino women and also the young. And so you've seen the Republicans start to move in that direction. So Marco Rubio from Florida has really taken up the flag here. He seems to be the obvious person to pick up immigration reform, and he has run with that. But we see that he's sort of painting himself into a corner as well. He can't be seen as being too lenient on immigration, because he needs to get through the primary contest, and that's going to be bruising.
And that hard right rump of the Republican Party, which has such a stranglehold when it comes to issues like that, or like guns, despite 80% of the population or more wanting reform, they won't budge on it. Is that going to really tell against the Republicans ultimately, if they're seen to be so out of touch, regardless who the face is, if the party is seen to be out of touch?
Yeah, well, it's very poor policy, but that's the politics and that's the political reality. And we see the other leading contender, Paul Ryan, who's leading the Republican budget movements in Congress. He's in the exact same position. So whereas he needs to appeal to the base initially, saying we're not going to increase revenue at all, when he wants to then appeal to, in the general election, to the more moderate, less conservative elements of the United States electorate, he needs to be seen as being able to do a deal, as being able to reach across the aisle and get a budget through. So he's painted himself into a corner as well.
Yeah, and coming back to Obama, he would also not just want to be leaving a legacy for himself, but to hand over to another Democrat in the White House. That raises the Clinton question, Hillary, which will not go away. Do you think she'd run?
I think she's leaving the door open. Already we see her a PAC. We're not sure how closely the Hillary clamp is associated with the PAC, but they're already raising money.
Money's not going to be a problem.
Money's not going to be money, but they're already raising money. So we see that they are certainly leaving the option open.
Yeah, and he is very funny.
He is.
There's no doubt about that. Obama, has fantastic comic timing. Adam, thank you so much for coming in. Adam Lockyer there on US Politics.